Nora recognized the missing woman because she was walking 6 feet in front of her. She stopped so suddenly that the volunteer behind her nearly walked into her backpack. The woman ahead kept moving through the trees, wearing the same orange search vest as everyone else. Nora looked down at the flyer in her hand. Emily Carter. 32 years old. Brown hair cut just above the shoulders. A narrow face, a small gap between her front teeth. Missing for 3 days. Nora looked up again. The woman in front of her had Emily's hair, Emily's face. Even the slight inward turn of her left foot when she walked. Nora had known Emily for almost 8 years. They had worked beside each other every weekday, until Emily changed jobs the previous winter. She knew the way Emily folded her arms when she was cold. She knew the sound of her laugh. She knew about the thin scar beneath Emily's left ear. It had been left by an operation when she was 19. The scar was not visible in the photograph on the flyer. Nora moved closer. The woman turned her head slightly. The scar was there. Nora reached out and touched her arm. Emily. The woman stopped. She looked at Nora without recognition. Who's Emily? For several seconds, Nora thought she had misheard her. She held up the flyer. The photograph trembled between them. This woman. The volunteer stared at it. Her eyes moved from the photograph to Nora and back again. She looks like me. She is you. No. Emily. Everyone has been looking for you. My name isn't Emily. The other volunteers had begun to notice them. A few stopped walking. Someone farther down the line asked whether there was a problem. The woman looked around at the gathering faces. Her confusion seemed real. So did her fear. My name is Rachel, she said. Nora pointed beneath her left ear. How did you get that scar? Rachel touched it instinctively. The speed of the movement made Nora's stomach tighten. I don't remember. What do you mean you don't remember? I mean, I've had it for years. How did it happen? Rachel opened her mouth, but no answer came. The team leader pushed through the volunteers before Nora could ask again. His name was Peter. He was a retired paramedic who had supervised dozens of volunteer searches. What's going on? Nora handed him the flyer. Then she pointed at Rachel. Peter examined the photograph without speaking. His expression changed. He immediately called the command post. This is Team 4. He kept his voice controlled. I need law enforcement at marker 12. A reply came through his radio. Peter instructed the rest of the volunteers to remain together. No one was to continue along the route. No one was to leave. Rachel stared at him. Am I being detained? No, Peter said. We need to establish who you are. I already told you who I am. Then this should be easy. Nora kept looking at Rachel's face. The resemblance did not weaken at close range. It became worse. There were tiny details that could not have come from the missing flyer. The pale mark beside Emily's eyebrow, the small chip on one lower tooth, the crease in her cheek that appeared when she pressed her lips together. Nora had seen all of them before. Rachel noticed her staring. "Please stop looking at me like that. You look exactly like her." "I can see that." "No, you don't understand." Nora held up the flyer again. "This is an old photograph." "So?" "She cut her hair after this was taken." Rachel's hair had the newer cut, the same one Emily wore in the photographs her family had given police that morning. Peter asked Rachel when she had joined the search. "This morning. Where did you register?" "At the main table." "What name did you give?" "Rachel Hayes." "Did anyone check your identification?" "No." "Do you have it with you?" "It's in my car." "Where is your car?" "Near the highway entrance." Peter glanced at Nora. The main volunteer parking area was beside the highway entrance. Hundreds of cars were there. "What brought you to this search?" he asked. "I saw the missing person post online." "Did you know Emily Carter?" "No." "Then why this search?" Rachel looked toward the other volunteers. "I wanted to help." It was an ordinary answer. Nothing she had done was illegal. Anyone could volunteer. The search had been advertised across local community pages, but Rachel had arrived using the face of the woman they were searching for. 2 sheriff's deputies reached them 15 minutes later. The senior deputy introduced herself as Deputy Shaw. She separated Rachel from the other volunteers and asked the same questions Peter had asked. Rachel gave the same answers. She said she lived in Bellwether, about 40 miles away. She provided an address, a phone number, and a date of birth. She said she had never met Emily. When Shaw called the number, it went directly to voicemail. Rachel said her phone battery had died. "Where is the phone now?" "In my car. Along with your identification." "Yes." "Can you show us?" Rachel hesitated. "I think so." "You think so?" "I don't remember exactly where I parked." There were nearly 200 vehicles in the field beside the command post. Forgetting where she had left hers was possible. Still, Shaw asked what kind of car it was. "A gray sedan." "What make?" Rachel lowered her eyes. "I'm bad with cars." "What does the badge on the front say?" "I don't know." "What does your key look like?" Rachel searched the pockets of her jacket, then the pockets of her jeans. "I must have dropped it." Nobody said anything. Deputy Shaw did not accuse her of lying. Instead, she asked Rachel to accompany them back to the command post. Rachel agreed. Peter assigned another volunteer to lead Team 4. Nora asked to go with Rachel. Shaw initially refused. Nora explained that she had known Emily for years and could help establish whether the resemblance extended beyond her face. After a brief discussion, Shaw allowed her to walk with them. Rachel remained between Shaw and the second deputy. No one restrained her. They followed the marked route toward the command post. At the first junction, Deputy Shaw paused to check the map on her phone. Rachel pointed to the trail on the right. "This way." Shaw looked up. "You said you haven't been here before." "I haven't." "Then how do you know?" Rachel pointed through the trees. "There's a marker." The orange route marker was attached to a post more than 50 yards away. It was possible she had seen it. At the next junction, Rachel turned left before anyone consulted the map. There was no marker. Nora stopped. "How did you know?" Rachel looked back at the path behind them. For the first time, she appeared frightened by something other than the people surrounding her. "I don't know." They continued. Nora tried to remember whether Emily had ever visited the reserve. She had. 2 summers earlier, Nora and Emily had walked part of the Northern Trail with several co-workers. The route they were following now had not been part of that trip. At least Nora did not think it had. They came to a narrow wooden footbridge. Rachel stopped halfway across it. She stared into the shallow stream below. "She dropped something here." Deputy Shaw turned. "Who did?" Rachel continued staring at the water. Nora moved closer. "Emily!" Rachel's head snapped toward her. "What?" "You said she dropped something." "I didn't say that." "Yes, you did." "What did she drop?" Shaw asked. Rachel shook her head. "I don't know." The second deputy searched beneath the bridge while the others waited. He found bottles, food wrappers, and a rusted fishing lure. Nothing was identified as Emily's. Shaw recorded the location anyway. Then she asked Rachel how she had known that someone had dropped an object there. Rachel had no explanation. The walk resumed in silence. The command post occupied a clearing beside the main parking field. Police vehicles, ambulances, and volunteer tents had been arranged around a portable communications trailer. A large photograph of Emily stood beside the registration table. Searchers returning from the trails stopped when they saw Rachel approaching. Some looked from her face to the photograph. Others raised their phones. Deputy Shaw ordered them not to take pictures. Near the communications trailer, a man pushed past 2 volunteers and ran toward Rachel. "Emily!" Nora recognized Mark Carter immediately. He had been at the command post since before sunrise. He had barely slept since his wife disappeared. A deputy stepped between them. Mark tried to move around him. "Emily, it's me." Rachel backed away. Her face showed no recognition. Please don't come near me. Mark stopped. The words seemed to injure him more than any scream could have. He looked at Nora. What happened to her? We don't know. Mark faced Rachel again. You know me. No, I'm your husband. Rachel stared at his wedding ring, then at her own left hand. There was no ring. Mark noticed. Where is it? I've never been married. That's not true. Deputy Shaw moved Mark several feet away and warned him that they did not yet know the woman's identity. Mark pointed at Rachel. That's my wife. Resemblance is not identification. She has the scar. Nora looked at him. How did you know we noticed it? Because Emily has had it since before we met. Mark tried to approach again. The deputy blocked him. I can prove it, Mark said. Ask her about Cooper. Rachel's eyes shifted toward him. It was a small movement. Mark saw it. Nora saw it too. Who is Cooper? Shaw asked. Rachel answered quietly. A dog. Mark's face went pale. What kind of dog? Rachel pressed both hands against her temples. I don't know. What did Emily call him when he stole food from the table? Mark, Shaw warned. Ask her. Rachel closed her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Captain. Mark stepped backward. Nora felt the skin tighten across her arms. Emily and Mark's dog was named Cooper, but Emily called him Captain whenever he misbehaved. She had used the nickname so often that Nora had once assumed it was his real name. It was not included in any missing person report. It had never appeared in a public post. Mark began to cry. Deputy Shaw asked Rachel how she knew the word. Rachel opened her eyes. I don't. You answered the question. It was just there. Mark tried another question. Where did we go after the wedding? Rachel looked at him blankly. Where did we spend our honeymoon? I don't know. What happened to your hand in Denver? Rachel looked down at her right palm. A narrow scar crossed the base of her thumb. She touched it. You broke a glass, she said. Then she stopped. Mark stared at her. Rachel's breathing became shallow. I don't know why I said that. What happened next? Mark asked. I don't know. You cut your hand washing the glass. Stop. I drove you to the emergency room. Stop asking me things. You needed 7 stitches. Rachel covered her ears. Stop. Deputy Shaw ended the questions and moved Rachel into an empty medical tent. A paramedic checked her pupils, blood pressure, and orientation. Rachel knew the date. She knew where she was. She could name the president and describe how she had supposedly traveled from Bellwether that morning. She showed no clear sign of concussion intoxication, or memory loss. Yet she could not explain the scars on her body. She could not describe her car. And she knew private details from Emily Carter's life. Nora remained outside with Mark. He watched the tent entrance without blinking. "When did Emily mention Rachel?" Nora asked. Mark turned toward her. "What?" "Rachel Hayes." The name seemed to mean something to him. Not recognition exactly. More like a memory that had not seemed important until now. "The night before Emily disappeared," he said. "What did she say?" "She thought someone was waiting near her office." "A man?" "She said it was a woman." "Did she see her face?" "No." "Did the woman speak to her?" Mark rubbed both hands over his face. "I don't think so." "What made Emily notice her?" "She was standing beside Emily's car." "For how long?" "I don't know." "Did Emily call the police?" "No." "Why not?" "Because the woman walked away." Nora looked toward the medical tent. "Did Emily describe her?" "She said the woman was wearing a dark jacket." "Anything else?" Mark shook his head. "She only gave me a name." Nora felt her mouth go dry. "What name?" Mark looked at the tent again. "Rachel." Deputy Shaw emerged before Nora could respond. She carried the volunteer registration form. Rachel's handwriting filled the top line. Rachel Hayes. Below it were the address and phone number she had provided. Shaw entered the medical tent again. Nora and Mark could hear her through the canvas wall. "I need you to confirm your full name." A brief silence followed. Then Rachel answered. "Rachel Hayes." Mark gripped Nora's arm. "That's the name Emily told me." Inside the tent, Deputy Shaw asked Rachel whether she had ever been outside Emily Carter's workplace. Rachel said no. Shaw asked whether she had approached Emily's car. Rachel said she had never seen it. Then Shaw asked a final question. "Did you follow Emily into these woods?" Rachel did not answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was different. Not deeper. Not distorted. It simply carried the exhaustion of someone trying to remember an event that had happened to somebody else. "I think she saw me before I had her face." Deputy Shaw stared at Rachel across the medical tent. "What do you mean, before you had her face?" Rachel looked down at her hands. "I don't know." "You just said it." "I know. Did you see Emily before she disappeared?" "No." "Did you follow her into the woods?" "No." "Then explain what you meant." Rachel touched the scar across her palm. "I can't." Shaw questioned her for another 20 minutes. Rachel continued to provide the same name, address, and phone number. But she had no identification, no car key, no working phone, and no explanation for knowing private details about Emily's life. Mark wanted her arrested. Deputy Shaw refused. "Looking like your wife is not a crime." She said she took her face. She made a confused statement. She knows where Emily is. Maybe she does, but I can't arrest her for that. Rachel stepped out of the tent. "I want to leave." Shaw asked her to remain until her identity could be verified. Rachel looked toward the parking field. "Am I being detained?" "No." "Then I'm leaving." Mark moved toward her. A deputy stopped him. Rachel flinched and backed away. Mark pointed at her face. "That belongs to my wife." Rachel did not answer. She crossed the clearing while volunteers stared at her. At the edge of the parking field, she passed behind an ambulance. No one saw her again. Mark turned on Deputy Shaw. "You didn't let Rachel leave. You let Emily's face leave." 20 minutes later, the search resumed under stricter rules. No one could move alone. Every team member had to remain visible. Any separation had to be reported immediately. The scent handler returned to the command post with Emily's dog. Mark gave him a sweatshirt she had worn before disappearing. The dog took the scent. It crossed the clearing and stopped at the exact place where Rachel had stood outside the tent. Then it followed the path she had taken toward the parking field. Mark looked at Shaw. "Now, do you believe me?" The dog reached the ambulance where Rachel had disappeared. It circled once. Then it turned away from the vehicles and pulled toward the northern trail. Nora joined the handler and 4 trained searchers. The dog led them along a stream, climbed a muddy bank, and entered thick brush. A strip of blue fabric hung from a thorn. Nora recognized it. Emily had been wearing a blue rain jacket when she disappeared. Farther down the slope, they found the jacket beneath wet leaves. One sleeve had been torn. There was no blood. Emily's shattered phone lay nearby. The dog continued beyond both objects. Emily had left that place without her jacket or phone. Whether she had walked away or been taken was impossible to know. Additional teams moved along the dry creek bed. A volunteer named Caleb searched the western bank with his partner, Owen. Caleb stepped behind a group of trees and disappeared into a shallow dip. 5 minutes later, Owen called him. There was no answer. He tried Caleb's radio. Only static returned. Then Owen saw an orange vest moving below the slope. "Caleb?" The figure continued away from him. Owen remembered the order against separating. He called for help instead of following. 3 searchers entered the dip together. They found fresh marks in the mud and a broken sapling. Caleb was gone. At the same time, a man wearing Caleb's face entered the command post. The registration clerk recognized him immediately. His jeans were muddy and his breathing was heavy. "What happened?" she asked. I fell. Where is Owen? He left me. Owen reported you missing. He was supposed to wait. Where are your radio and phone? The man searched his empty pockets. I must have dropped them. Both? He looked toward the communications trailer. Then he noticed Mark standing beside it. Is that Emily's husband? The clerk followed his gaze. Yes. Is the rest of her family here? Why are you asking? The man did not answer. A transmission came through the command radio. Peter's voice broke through the static. We found a male volunteer below the western bank. The clerk reached for the handset. Is he injured? His foot is trapped between two rocks. A voice shouted behind Peter. The clerk looked at the man standing before her. Peter spoke again. He says his name is Caleb Mercer. The clerk slowly lowered the radio. The man wearing Caleb's face was already walking away. Caleb. He did not stop. Two volunteers crossed between them. When they passed, he had vanished behind the emergency vehicles. The real Caleb arrived 30 minutes later. He leaned on two searchers and kept his weight off his left foot. His radio was attached to his vest. His phone was still in his pocket. The clerk examined his face. It was identical to the one she had seen. The same nose, the same mark above the eyebrow, the same uneven beard. Were you here earlier? She asked. No. Did you speak to me? No. Caleb explained that he had slipped between two rocks. He called Owen 6 times over the radio. Owen shook his head. I never heard you. You answered me. What did I say? You told me to stay where I was. I didn't. Caleb looked toward the creek. Then who was speaking to me? He said he had also shouted for help. At first, another voice repeated the words farther down the creek. Caleb assumed it was an echo. Then the voice continued after he stopped shouting. Deputy Shaw reviewed footage from a news vehicle. The false Caleb appeared walking behind an ambulance. The camera never showed him emerging from the other side. Mark stood beside her. First Rachel. Now Caleb. How many people does it have to copy before you stop treating this like confusion? Shaw did not argue. She recalled every active search team. Names were checked against faces. Friends were asked to verify one another. Volunteers who had arrived alone were kept apart. They were no longer searching only for Emily. They were searching for anyone who might already have returned. A call arrived from an officer verifying Rachel's address. The address was real. A woman named Rachel Hayes lived there, but she had undergone surgery 4 days earlier and was using crutches. The officer sent a photograph. The real Rachel had blonde hair and a round face. She looked nothing like Emily. Rachel said someone had entered her unlocked car 3 days earlier. A dark jacket was missing. So were an old employee card and a copy of her vehicle registration. The woman at the search had not invented Rachel Hayes. She had stolen enough pieces to become her. A name, an address, a reason to exist. She had only needed Emily for the face. Nora looked at Deputy Shaw. She found Rachel's car before Emily disappeared. Mark stiffened. Emily saw a woman standing beside her car that night. Did she see the woman's face? Shaw asked. No. What did she see? A dark jacket. Before anyone could respond, the command radio crackled. A female voice emerged through the static. Please. Mark seized the edge of the desk. Nora recognized the voice, too. It belonged to Emily. The transmission disappeared. Then it returned from a different search channel. Please find me. Peter reached for the radio. Emily, tell us where you are. Only static answered. Then Emily's voice spoke once more. This time, something beneath it was repeating the words a fraction of a second. Late. I'm still here. The command post fell silent. Deputy Shaw replayed the final transmission. Emily's voice came first. The second voice followed less than a second later. It matched her tone, but not her breathing. Peter checked the radio log. The first message had come from Team 7's channel. The second had come from Team 2's. Neither team had transmitted at that moment. Could Emily have a radio? Nora asked. Peter shook his head. Not one of ours. What about the radio the false Caleb was missing? The real Caleb still has his. Deputy Shaw looked toward the equipment table. One handheld radio had disappeared. It had been issued that morning to a volunteer named Simon. Simon was standing 20 feet away. His assigned radio was no longer clipped to his vest. He said he had placed it beside the water cooler while helping carry supplies. The radio had vanished shortly after Rachel walked through the command post. Shaw examined the channel list. Team 7 had searched the northern trail before being recalled. Team 2 had been working near the southern boundary. The transmissions had come from opposite sides of the reserve. It's moving, Mark said. Peter pointed at the radio. Or it wants us to think it is. Nora remembered Rachel turning at the trail junctions without consulting the map. She knew the route back. Shaw looked at her. She could have seen the markers. She knew before she saw them. Nora unfolded the search map. Rachel had directed them toward the command post, but at the footbridge, she had stopped and said Emily had dropped something there. The dog had later found Emily's jacket nearly a mile away. What if she wasn't remembering the trail? Nora asked. What was she doing? Mark said. Sending us in the wrong direction. Peter marked the bridge, the Dry Creek bed, and the 2 channels used for the radio messages. The points formed no useful path. They only pulled search teams farther apart. Deputy Shaw ordered everyone to ignore unverified radio instructions, No team would move unless the command post confirmed the speaker with a personal question. Mark took the radio from Peter. "Emily, if you can hear me, tell me where Cooper sleeps." Static answered. Then Emily's voice came through. "In the kitchen." Mark closed his eyes. "That isn't her." "How do you know?" Shaw asked. "Cooper sleeps beside our bed." The voice returned immediately. "Beside our bed." This time everyone heard the second layer beneath it. The same words repeated slightly late. It was not answering from memory. It was correcting itself. "It can hear us," Nora said. Peter shut off the radio. Every handheld unit at the command post went silent. The search teams returned to the clearing in pairs. Deputies checked their faces against registration photographs. Each volunteer was asked a question that could not have been learned during the search. The real Caleb was verified by Owen. The real Rachel was confirmed through the officer at her home. Emily remained the only person whose face had appeared without its owner. Nora studied the map again. The creature had known which trail led back to the command post. It had known where Emily dropped something. The dog had followed Emily's scent from Rachel's path into the northern woods. But Emily's jacket and phone had been found near the Dry Creek bed. The creature had copied more than Emily's appearance. It carried enough of her scent to deceive the dog, enough of her memories to answer some questions, and enough of her voice to call for help. But every copy was incomplete. Rachel knew Cooper's nickname, but not what kind of dog he was. The false Caleb knew Owen's name, but not what he wore. The voice knew Mark's correction only after hearing him say it. "It doesn't take everything," Nora said. "It takes fragments." "From where?" Shaw asked. Nora looked at the volunteers. "From us." She thought about the first morning of the search. People had stood in groups discussing Emily. Mark had described her clothes. Friends had repeated stories about her. Volunteers had studied photographs and listened to her family. The creature had entered among them wearing Emily's face. For hours, it had heard people supply the details it lacked. It didn't come here because it wanted to help search for Emily, Nora said. It came here to learn how to be her. Mark looked toward the darkening tree line. Then why copy Caleb? Because we noticed Emily's face. Peter understood first. It needed another one. A face that belonged at the command post. A voice that could ask questions without attracting attention. Caleb had separated from his partner for only a few minutes. That had been enough. Shaw turned the radios back on, but ordered all channels kept clear. If Emily is alive, we need her to speak without giving that thing anything else to repeat. Mark pressed the transmit button. He did not say Emily's name. He used the private name he called her only at home. If this is really you, Press the radio button twice. He released it. 2 short bursts of static answered. Then silence. Mark's face changed. "That's her." "Ask where she is," Peter said. Mark transmitted again. 1 press for north, 2 for south, 3 for east, 4 for west. 3 bursts answered. They repeated the process using landmarks. Emily did not speak. She responded only with the radio button. The answers placed her east of the Dry Creek bed, near an abandoned maintenance route that no longer appeared on the volunteer maps. A deputy found it on an older reserve plan. The route ended at a concrete drainage structure beneath the hillside. Peter selected 6 trained searchers. Deputy Shaw joined them. Nora and Mark insisted on going. Shaw allowed Mark, but ordered Nora to remain at the command post. Nora refused. She recognized me. Emily. The woman wearing her face. Nora took one of the radios. "If it sees me again, it may believe I'm easier to fool than a deputy." Shaw disliked the idea. She accepted it because they had no better one. The group entered the Eastern Trail before sunset. They moved close enough to touch one another. No one answered a voice unless they could see the speaker. The maintenance route was nearly hidden by brush. Fresh footprints crossed the mud. One set belonged to hiking boots. The other was barefoot. Both sets moved toward the drainage structure. Mark recognized the pattern of Emily's boots. The barefoot prints were longer than a human foot. The toes pressed too deeply into the ground. Near the entrance, the tracks separated. Emily's continued inside. The bare feet climbed the slope above them. Deputy Shaw raised her light. Nothing moved among the trees. A sound came from inside the drainage tunnel. "Nora!" It was Emily's voice. Nora did not answer. The voice came again, closer this time. "Nora, please." Mark started toward the entrance. Shaw caught his arm. "Use the question." Mark called into the darkness. "Where does Cooper sleep?" "Beside our bed." The answer came too quickly. The creature had learned it at the command post. Nora stepped backward. The voice inside the tunnel changed. It became Mark's. "Nora, she's in here." The real Mark was standing beside her. Then it used Peter's voice. "We found her." Peter lifted his radio. He had not spoken those words. The creature had heard him say them when Caleb was rescued. It was repeating useful sentences. Nothing more. A branch broke on the hillside. The group turned. For a moment, Nora saw Emily standing between 2 trees. She wore the missing blue jacket, although the real jacket was already in police custody. Her face looked correct. Her posture did not. Her arms hung too far from her body, as if the shoulders had been placed slightly wrong. Mark whispered, Don't look at it." The false Emily smiled. Then Caleb's voice came from her mouth. "Stay where you are." Deputy Shaw aimed her weapon. The figure stepped behind a tree. When Shaw's light reached it, it was gone. A weak tapping came from inside the drainage tunnel. 2 taps, a pause, 2 more. Mark ran inside. This time, Shaw followed. They found Emily behind a collapsed metal grate 30 yards into the tunnel. Her wrists were bound with strips torn from her own shirt. A volunteer radio lay beside her. Its speaker had been broken, but the transmit button still worked. Emily was dehydrated and barely conscious. She recoiled when Mark approached. He stopped several feet away. "It's me." Emily stared at his face. Then she asked the same question he had used over the radio. "Where does Cooper sleep?" "Beside our bed." She shook her head. "That heard you say it." Mark began to cry. Emily looked at his left hand. "What did you lose in Denver?" Mark answered without hesitation. "My wedding ring." "Where?" "Inside the wall of the hotel room." Only Emily knew. She reached for him. Mark crossed the tunnel and held her. Deputy Shaw cut the bindings. Nora examined the dirt around the grate. Several sets of prints entered the tunnel. Only Emily's boots led out from behind the grate. The creature had kept her alive. Not for food. Not because it could not kill her. It had needed her to remain missing. As long as Emily was missing, people would continue arriving. Friends, relatives, volunteers, people carrying voices, faces, and lives it could use. From the entrance, Peter called Shaw's name. Shaw answered before remembering the rule. No one stood at the entrance. Peter was still outside on the trail. The same voice called again from farther inside the tunnel. Then Nora's own voice whispered behind her. "She reached me first." Everyone turned. The darkness was empty. Emily gripped Mark's arm. "That's what it does." Nora lowered herself beside her. "What?" "It listens until someone comes alone." Emily looked toward the tunnel entrance. "Then it goes back wearing them. It listens until someone comes alone." Deputy Shaw looked toward the entrance. "Can it copy someone without taking them?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. What happened to you?" Emily tried to stand. Her legs failed beneath her. Mark caught her before she struck the ground. "Later," he said. "We need to get her out." A voice answered from the darkness. "You need to get her out." It belonged to Deputy Shaw. The real Shaw raised her weapon. Her flashlight moved across the tunnel behind them. Nothing was there. Peter's radio crackled. His voice came through from outside. "Shaw, we have movement above the entrance." Deputy Shaw reached for her radio. Nora stopped her. Make him prove it. Shaw pressed the button. What did I tell you before we entered? Peter answered immediately. That no one answers a voice they can't see. It was correct. Shaw looked at Nora. That thing heard her give the same order, Emily whispered. Peter called again. Something is coming down the slope. Shaw did not answer. She helped Mark lift Emily between them. Nora walked behind with one of the searchers. The others faced deeper into the tunnel. They began moving toward the entrance. From somewhere ahead, Peter shouted, "Stop!" Everyone froze. Peter appeared at the mouth of the tunnel. He stood against the fading light with his radio in one hand. "Don't come closer," Shaw said. Peter stopped. What happened? Tell me who searched beneath the footbridge. The second deputy. What did he find? Bottles, food wrappers, and a fishing lure. Nora's stomach tightened. Peter had been at the command post when Shaw reported the search. He could have heard every detail. Shaw asked another question. What did Caleb complain about this morning? The coffee. That answer was also known to half the volunteers. Peter glanced over his shoulder. We don't have time for this. Something moved across the slope behind him. Shaw raised her weapon. Peter stepped into the tunnel. Stay where you are. Shaw, it's me. Then answer one question it couldn't have heard. Peter's expression changed. Not much. Only the muscles around his mouth became still. Shaw continued. Before we entered the trail, you asked me for something. Peter looked toward Nora, then toward Emily. I don't remember. The real Peter had asked Shaw for an extra flashlight. No one else had been close enough to hear. The figure at the entrance smiled. Caleb's voice came from Peter's mouth. Stay where you are. Shaw fired. The bullet struck its shoulder. The figure turned with the impact, but did not fall. For an instant, Peter's face appeared to slide across its skull. One eye remained in place while the other moved lower. Its mouth opened too far. Then Emily's face replaced Peter's. Mark, it cried. Mark nearly released her. The real Emily buried her face against his chest. That isn't me. The creature rushed into the tunnel. Its movements destroyed the human shape it wore. Its knees bent inward. Its shoulders struck both walls. The arms that had appeared normal reached almost to the ground. Shaw fired again. The creature dropped behind the collapsed grate. Nora heard it moving deeper into the drainage system. Not crawling. Running. A searcher reached the entrance and looked outside. No one on the slope. Peter's radio transmitted again. This time, the voice was distant and breathless. Shaw, answer me. Nora took the radio. What did you ask her for? A flashlight. Where are you? 20 yards above the entrance. What do you see? Peter hesitated. Me. A gunshot sounded above them. The transmission ended. Deputy Shaw ordered everyone out. Mark carried Emily through the final yards of the tunnel. Nora emerged behind them. Peter lay on the slope with blood across the side of his head. The bullet had cut through his ear, but missed his skull. One searcher was pressing cloth against the wound. "What shot you?" Shaw asked. Peter pointed uphill. "You did." Shaw stared at him. Peter struggled to breathe. "It came out of the trees wearing your face." "It had your gun." Shaw checked her holster. Her weapon was still in her hand. The false Shaw had not carried a real gun. It had produced the sound. Peter had thrown himself down before the shot. The blood came from striking a rock. "It wanted us to think he was dead," Nora said. Emily looked toward the trees. "No." Her voice was weak but certain. "It wanted you to leave him." A cry came from farther uphill, Peter's voice. "Help me!" The real Peter closed his eyes. Another cry followed from the opposite direction. Then another. Within seconds, his voice surrounded them. Some calls sounded injured. Others sounded terrified. One began laughing halfway through the word, "Help." Deputy Shaw formed a tight circle around Emily. "No one leaves the group." They moved toward the maintenance trail. The creature followed through the trees. They never saw it clearly. They saw Emily's blue jacket between the trunks. Caleb's orange vest appeared above the trail. Rachel stood barefoot beside the stream. Each figure vanished when a flashlight reached it. The voices continued. They called from behind the group. Then ahead of it. Sometimes they used names. Sometimes they repeated questions asked at the command post. "Where does Cooper sleep? Who is your partner? Am I being detained?" Every answer they had given it returned as bait. Halfway to the clearing, Nora heard her mother's voice. She stopped before understanding why. Her mother had been dead for 6 years. "Nora." The voice came from a narrow trail on the right. It sounded tired, exactly as it had during her final week in the hospital. "Nora, I need you." Nora took one step toward it. Emily caught her wrist. "It heard you talk about her." Nora remembered telling another volunteer about her mother that morning. She had explained why missing person searches mattered to her. The creature had been somewhere close enough to listen. Her mother's voice called again. This time it pronounced Nora's name incorrectly. The mistake broke the memory. Nora turned away. The voice became Emily's, then Mark's, then her own. It followed them to the edge of the command post. The clearing should have been crowded. Instead, Only 3 deputies and a handful of volunteers remained. The parking field was nearly empty. Deputy Shaw looked around. "Where is everyone?" A deputy approached them. "You ordered an evacuation." "I did no such thing." The man slowed. "What?" "You spoke to me 10 minutes ago." "Where?" "Beside the communications trailer." "What did I say?" "You said the search had become unsafe." The deputy pointed toward the road. "You ordered all civilians to leave in their own vehicles." Nora looked across the field. Nearly 200 volunteers had been released. Many had arrived alone. No one had verified the woman giving the order because she had worn Deputy Shaw's face. Shaw grabbed the command radio. "Stop every vehicle leaving to reserve." The deputy shook his head. "They're already on the county road. Contact Highway Patrol." "Which vehicle are we looking for?" No one answered. It did not need to remain one person. It only needed a face that belonged inside one of the cars. Mark carried Emily into the medical tent. The paramedic who examined her confirmed severe dehydration, bruising, and wounds around her wrists. None was life-threatening. Emily refused to let Mark leave her sight. She also refused to answer questions while anyone stood behind her. Deputy Shaw positioned officers at every entrance. No one was permitted inside without being verified by someone who knew them. The remaining volunteers were photographed, questioned, and separated. All of them were eventually confirmed. The creature was no longer at the command post. Shaw contacted every driver who had left. Most had carried passengers. Friends confirmed friends. Couples confirmed each other. 2 vans had transported groups that arrived together. Everyone inside them was accounted for. Only one vehicle could not be verified. It belonged to a volunteer named Owen Price. Owen had left with Caleb shortly after the false evacuation order. Caleb answered his phone from the passenger seat. He said Owen was driving. Deputy Shaw told him to ask Owen a private question. Caleb became silent. "What kind of question?" "Something the man beside you could not have learned today." Caleb whispered that he understood. The line remained open. Nora heard road noise. Then Caleb asked, "What did you break in my apartment last winter?" Owen answered, "A lamp." Caleb breathed into the phone. Deputy Shaw waited. "Is that correct?" "No." "What did he break?" "My bathroom mirror." The road noise changed. The vehicle began moving faster. Shaw told Caleb not to confront him. "Tell me where you are." Before Caleb could answer, Owen spoke. His voice was calm. "Who are you talking to?" "No one." "Give me the phone." Caleb refused. The vehicle swerved. He shouted. The call filled with the sound of tires leaving pavement. Then metal struck something solid. The connection remained open. Deputy Shaw called Caleb's name. At first there was no response. Then someone picked up the phone. "Nora!" It was Emily's voice. Nora stood beside the real Emily inside the medical tent. The voice on the phone repeated her name. "Nora." Shaw ended the call. Police found Owen's vehicle 12 minutes later. It had struck a tree beside the county road. Caleb was trapped in the passenger seat but alive. The driver's door stood open. There was no blood behind the wheel. No footprints led away from the vehicle. Owen Price was not found. His phone was later located in the reserve near the place where Caleb had disappeared. His radio lay beside it. The real Owen had never left the woods. Searchers found him after sunrise at the bottom of the western bank. His hands and feet had been bound. He was unconscious but alive. He remembered following Caleb's voice into the trees. He did not remember anything after someone touched the back of his neck. The thing that drove away with Caleb had already been wearing Owen before the evacuation began. It had not escaped by copying someone inside a car. It had prepared the driver first. Emily spent 2 nights in the hospital. She remembered little about the first attack. A woman in a dark jacket had approached her beside the reserve trail. The woman's face seemed unfinished. Emily could not describe it. She remembered hearing her own voice from behind her. Then she woke inside the drainage tunnel. The creature returned whenever searchers entered the woods. Sometimes it asked Emily questions. Sometimes it sat beyond the grate and repeated conversations from the command post. By the second day, it knew Mark's name. By the third, it knew how Emily laughed. It never asked where she lived. It learned that from the people searching for her. The sheriff's office closed the reserve. Teams searched the drainage system for 6 days. They found passages too narrow for a person to enter. They found blood on the concrete where Shaw's bullets had struck the creature. The laboratory could not identify what produced it. The sample contained human cells from more than one person. No single profile was complete. Rachel's, Caleb's, Emily's, Owen's. Fragments of 4 people inside the same blood. No remains were found. No similar disappearances were reported in the county during the following months. Most investigators believed the creature had died somewhere beneath the hillside. Deputy Shaw did not. She kept the recording of the final call from Owen's vehicle. For weeks, she listened only to the voices. Then a technician removed the road noise and isolated the seconds before the crash. Caleb was asking his private question. The false Owen answered incorrectly. A struggle followed. Beneath both voices, another sound could be heard. Someone was breathing in the back seat. The passenger list said Caleb and Owen had left alone. Just before the vehicle struck the tree, the third person whispered one sentence. The voice belonged to Deputy Shaw. "Now you know which one I am."